Hello, New Zealand. Welcome to Political Playback. And the big question of the night is, will we see Simon O'Connor's name on the Epstein list when they're released?
My enemy's wish, but not a chance. Not a chance.
Okay. I thought I might do a word search on Simon. There's got to be some Simons in the Epstein list, I'm sure of it.
Undoubtedly,
Okay.
along with a few Bobs as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay. The other thing is that yesterday was International Men's Day. And of course, we saw wall-to-wall coverage and interviews galore on Breakfast TV and special features of the importance of men. Did we not? No, we didn't.
Not a sausage.
No, okay. Right, anyway, we've got a few topics to get into. If you'd like to comment, we will see your comment if you do it on the Family First Facebook page or if you do it on our YouTube channel. But you may be watching on Instagram or Substack or X or LinkedIn or Simon's Facebook page or my Facebook page, because we are everywhere. We are looking for you because we want you to watch. People are saying hello already anyway. All right, let's get straight into it. Look, I do just want to deal with the sort of the breaking news, which is a very interesting one, and that is that because I need you to explain this one to me, Simon. So Winston Peters, New Zealand First, they vote for this Regulatory Standards Act. And then 2 days after they've done it, they say, well, actually, we didn't want to vote for it. And so we're going to campaign on getting rid of it, to which David Seymour responds, well, it sounds like you're going to go with Labour then. But I mean, it is a good response. I mean, I guess one is, firstly, the political year has already kicked off, even though it's not till next year. And the second thing is, I do sort of understand that, unfortunately, as you experience, sometimes you do have to swallow some rats as part of being a coalition government. That would be a fair conclusion, wouldn't it?
It would be, and I mean, look, I don't fully understand the workings of New Zealand First. I mean, it's clearly political. I mean, gosh, that sort of says babies eat cake, doesn't it? Sort of obvious, but it's providing a bit of differentiation. But they probably decided this was not the bill to die on the hill over. You know, it's clearly something extremely important to act. I suspect there will be a lot of discussion in behind the closed doors of Cabinet. But New Zealand First and Winston have said, hey, look, we don't like it, but we're not going to bring the government down over it. We're not going to create a great big scandal. And as you pointed out, they've waited and said, now we're going to get rid of it. And it seems the basic premise is Winston and New Zealand First see this as unelected bureaucrats getting to basically decide and vet legislation. He doesn't like that.
Okay. And I mean, look, we are going to talk about Puberty blocker decision shortly. It may be that David Seymour wasn't too keen on that one, but it was part of well, no, it wasn't part of the coalition agreement, was it? So what we're saying is that in the coalition agreement signed 2 years ago by New Zealand First and ACT, New Zealand First would have seen that this regulatory standards bill was going to be put before Parliament, and as a government, they would have to support it. And they figured out, well, we're just going to have to take that loss.
I think it's probably the horse trading. So there's only agreements between National and ACT and National and New Zealand First. There is not coalition agreements between ACT and New Zealand First, just on a minor technical point for the aficionados watching. But there'll be things in the National New Zealand First agreement which the ACT party doesn't like, and vice versa. So that's that horse trading. They go, look, fine, we won't kick up a stink on this, and you don't kick up a stink on that. I think puberty blockers, when we get to it's a different kettle of fish. But yeah, I can sort of actually appreciate where Winston's coming from. Once you pass laws like this, it's like the Treaty Principles Bill. I know that didn't pass into law, but once those are there, they can be amended. And so all the things that Seymour wants in it, well, that could be replaced by Labour and the Greens with all their things. So I'm not unsympathetic to what Winston's doing.
Okay, and I think the other example of that is the pay equity thing. I think that was pushed by ACT. I'm not quite sure that National would have been all over it if they weren't being sort of pushed by ACT on that particular one. But look, it does suggest that, I mean, for Seymour to say that, the gloves are off between Winston and David Seymour. I mean, get the popcorn and the fizzy drink, because these two are going to be after a similar vote in some ways, aren't they? And it's, I would say from next year on, it's campaign season the whole year.
It is, but the paradox is this, Bob. Their fates, their electoral fates, are tied to one another. ACT doesn't get back unless New Zealand First goes with them in National, and same the other way around. None of them get back. I can't see at this point a coalition between just two parties on the right.
Yep.
It needs all three. So yes, Winston and Seymour can rage at each other, but they need each other. And then one really quick point around pay equity. I think National, Nicola Willis and Luxon were very happy, whether they knew the details or not. It financially saved them in inverted commas, something like 11 billion, which they were then able to reprioritize and spend elsewhere. So I don't think National was kicking and screaming on that one.
No. Okay, that was just a sort of a breaking news one. Let's get into our topics as we've got them. And firstly, the puberty blockers. And look, I think one of the interesting things that we've both commented on previously is just kind of the lack of really solid media coverage. They haven't been sort of all over this. They've kind of reported it. Hasn't been that good a reporting. Yep, all the sort of major channels did it. News Talk ZB had sort of two opponents on it this morning. This was a shocking article from the Post where they basically... Oh, no, actually, sorry. This was the good one. It was it this one? No, sorry, I'll go back. The Post is the one that was completely biased and hopeless. It was this one which has just been published 35 minutes ago. There we are. And I actually, just to show you how gracious I am, I actually emailed Lillian and I said, congratulations on your coverage of the issue. Finally, both sides. And look, she's gone through and she's given supporters. We're mentioned in it. Part of our media release is quoted. But it's not just because of that. She's quoted a number of groups, other groups that are on our side. And she's quoted those who oppose the decision. I just thought, man, if the media could actually do reports like that, you win the trust. And I would just say Lillian Hanley is the journalist of the year because it's been one of the few ones where I've read a whole report and seen sort of a number of people on either side being quoted and me not being told what to think, letting me draw my own conclusion.
Yeah, well, I've not read her one. I was thinking of an earlier one that you and I were talking from RNZ, which then got syndicated to TV1, which was another.
It was this one.
Yeah, another good indication, if I recall correctly, like 4 voices in opposition, and at the very end, and this expert in Otago said actually it was appropriate. It's just sort of an afterthought. And so, yeah, well, kudos to Lillian then. As you say, there are arguments on both sides of this. The cabinet, we know, weighed those up. But, the proponents of puberty blockers, of chemicalizing children with experimental drugs, are completely on the wrong side of this. The evidence for them is just not there. But that's why you're going to get these shrill media articles. They have to just shout people down because they don't have the evidence to back up what they're saying.
Now, Winston was out saying, taking lots of credit for it. Although on the other side, Te Pāti Māori, they said that the ban is state-sanctioned harm against trans rangatahi, and just parroted all the statements about, it was harming kids, refusing to take into account that actually there's a dysphoria going on and that perhaps the young people need healing of the mind rather than cutting of the body. One of the questions that was asked that I didn't have an answer off the top of my head when I heard the question being asked. I think it was Sean Plunkett was asking Jan Rivers from one of the gender critical groups, and it was how many kids are actually on puberty blockers. And so I did just look it up in the New Zealand Medical Journal, and you can see there back in 2022 that top blue line is the total, and it's around 700 kids. So you're not talking about a massive cohort. You're simply talking about the fact that, the other thing to take into account is it's a very short period of time when you're going through that puberty. So it's not as though you're on this drug for life. you're on a very short time, but the problem is that you're interfering with the natural process of the body, and these kids then go on to cross-sex hormones to continue the attempt to change their sex. So, yeah, it's more the ideology that's being pushed and the fact that this is seen as a solution of experimenting on our kids, isn't it?
It is. I mean, these drugs are not safe. We cannot say with any certainty that they're safe. I mean, that's the fundamental point. You know, the first principle of medical ethics, and I just want to flip out the Latin because I can, primum non nocere. First of all, do no harm. And they cannot, hand on heart. And in fact, you know, what's telling for me, if you could bring that graph back up, or that chart, what's really telling is you begin to see the dip. So it's going up and up and up as a very small cohort of doctors, and to be fair, afraid parents, because the parents have been told the lie that this will stop their child dying. That is an absolute bald-faced lie. But you can see it's just going up and up and up and up because this, again, small set of doctors are making money off this. They're writing their articles. But then out comes the CAS report. And some of those doctors, I would argue, have gone, you know what, I can no longer prescribe, which is why you're seeing that dip. But you still have a group absolutely ideologically captured by this. And the last comments from your Māori party image. Let's be really clear for viewers and listeners. There is no such thing as trans rangatahi. There are just children in their bodies, which are good bodies, but they're confused about it. There is no such thing as a trans rangatahi. But this is just the Maori party. They can't even work out their own identity, let alone trying to come on here and tell children what they can be.
Okay, just to give myself some advertising, did do an interview with Winston Peters this morning on the puberty blockers issue, but also the other thing. So that's on our website now. You can go and watch that, or on our YouTube channel, or don't do it yet. Do it at 6:00 when we've finished. But the other thing that did come up, where is it? Was just this story where the new sex ed program, or the new curriculum, is being introduced into Parliament, and as part of it, it's the new sex ed curriculum, which we've reviewed. We've given a B+. We think there's still some room for improvement, but there's a big improvement. There's a pushback on the gender ideology, so it's been a double whammy for sort of radical gender activists at the moment. They must be feeling under the pump. Actually, I need to come back to this question before I cover this topic. If you've got Te Pāti Māori saying this, and I suspect that the Green Party would also say it, although I looked on their social media, and their social media is half asleep. So something's going on in the Green Party. Anyway, I just want to put that out there. And Labour, Labour are too busy looking for Luxon TikToks so that they can, I tell you what, go to Labour's social media, all they do is they find Luxon TikToks and make fun of it. I mean, it's not exactly great government policy and maturity, but anyway. Anyway, the question is, Simon, in 12 months, the government could change to a radical left Labour Te Pāti Māori Greens, and we are going to be back in the same position.
Yeah, we could be, and that would be a real problem. And of course, the paradox would be very clear that they are now politically interfering. So at the moment, Greens and Te Pāti Māori are going, oh my God, the government's getting in the way, leave it to the doctors. And then they themselves, in a degree, would be interfering, particularly against the scientific evidence and consensus. But let's see what happens. But I think this just shows two political parties that don't really have an understanding of science, medical evidence, and obviously what is good for the child. Otherwise, they would be supporting this. You know, what has happened here is not unusual. The UK, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, multiple states in the US. Is it Alberta and Canada?
Alberta and Canada, yeah, that sort of went under the radar. They banned puberty blockers last week. They're reinforcing it because of court action against it. And the other thing that they've done in Alberta is that they have made sex education opt-in, which is one of the questions I actually asked Winston about in the interview that I had with him, is would he support opt-in for sex education, which I don't know if he'd actually thought of. So it was interesting just to see his reaction. The other thing I asked him was, is it time to fix the conversion therapy law? Because remember, he wasn't in Parliament at the time. And if at the moment the law criminalises counsellors, pastors, family members, medical professionals who reaffirm their child's biological sex and says, no, you can't go on the cross-sex hormones, you can't go on the puberty blockers, you get criminalised for that, you could get up to 5 years in jail. That's how dangerous the law is. Now, if they've just deemed that actually, whoops, puberty blockers aren't that safe, they're not the solution, perhaps the conversion therapy law needs to be revisited.
Well, it would have to be in many ways because, of course, if you're not chemicalizing children, it's good that we're not, let's underline that, you have to have conversations. And it's going to put counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, parents at risk that if they are talking about the range of options, they could cross a law, which would be no good at all. And the other thing, of course, with conversion therapy laws is that...
Sorry, I'm just writing down that statement you just made. If we're not chemicalizing kids, we need to have conversations. That's going to be my line for when we call for the overturning of the conversion therapy law. Sorry about that. Just had to write that down. Carry on.
No, for a moment as you were reacting, I mean, has the sound dropped out or something? No, look, the underlying hypocrisy, paradox, whatever you want to call it, of the conversion therapy law is that it actually enables literally the conversion of children by chemicals and surgical mutilations. That's what it allows. It doesn't allow conversations. And so the only people doing conversions are the people pushing the law, and they do it by toxic chemicals, and they do it by scalpels. And it's an absolute scandal, Bob, of the highest order.
Yeah, conversion therapy is still legal in New Zealand, but it's only if you push them to the LGBT direction. Just speaking of Te Pāti Māori, the other bit of breaking news, seems to be always a lot of news between 4 and 5, just directly before political playback. I'm sure they do that just to really stress us. But Hana Rafferty Maipi Clark has finally broken her silence about which side she's on in the Te Pāti Māori implosion, and she's basically said it's like watching your parents get divorced. She says both sides are at fault, so she hasn't taken sides. So some interesting comments. In fact, as the youngest MP in Te Pāti Māori, she's probably shown the most maturity, which is kind of ironic, given her age. So yeah, well done to her on that. Speaking of the LGBT, of course, what the media have been very interested in getting lots of comments from, but only from one side, is around this whole breakers who don't want to be part of the Pride round, just like the Manly Seven. But then, of course, they go chasing after people who can slam them and get all offended. Ironically, this guy, Ian Roberts, that they're quoting, used to play for Manly. So that's kind of funny. But they've also gone, you'll see here, the New Zealand Herald then started talking about the BNZ and how the BNZ weren't happy with the decision. So they go for the funders. So, yeah, there's a bit of a campaign in the media against the breakers. So, and then they go looking for anybody that said something mean against the breakers on social media and say, the whole public are against the breakers. It's all part of a typical campaign. I did have a clip from 3 News, but I can't bear to show it to you by the world's worst news readers. But it just continues this campaign of basically you either bow down to the Pride round or we're going to cancel you. Going after the funders, of course, is part of their strategy.
Oh, it's harassment, it's bullying, and it's abuse. I mean, there's no need to wear a Pride jersey any more than one should be wearing a Christmas jersey, a Ramadan jersey, an Easter jersey, a Diwali jersey, a Palestine jersey, an Israel jersey.
Don't give them ideas, Simon. You're giving them ideas. They're writing them down now. They just left out the Christmas one.
That's probably true, but the absurdity is there is no consistency at all. But you do see, and we've talked about this before, particularly in this Pride space, it is an aggressive, coercive, bullying dynamic. And I've only just seen that headline, so correct me if I'm interpreting the article wrong, but this Professor Sally Shaw urging more education. That reminds me of communist struggle sessions. You will be educated until you think the way we want you to think. Again, it's a coercive dynamic, and the simple message is go away. These
Yeah.
guys are allowed to wear what they need to wear so long as it's their uniform. All these other accoutrements, there's the word for you today, all the other little bits and bobs are not needed.
Bits and bobs. There we are. That was a word I can spell. Bobs. The interesting thing is that it's just they've had more to say about this issue. I was sort of surprised at the lack of coverage of the puberty blocker issue, but they've sort of caught up with themselves today because they've managed to find a whole lot of people that are upset by it. So that was sort of the delay. They had to, make some phone calls. Look, let me just go back to this one. We were just touching on it before we move on from this whole area around, young kids and education and relationship, sexuality education. So the new curriculum coming in. The new curriculum says that there's new curriculum on RSE. It's not too bad, gets rid of the radical stuff. But part of the thing is that they're taking away the parental consultation that has to be done every 2 years. Now, when I first heard that, I thought that's a concern. Parents need to be involved in the process. I once again asked Winston about this in the interview, and their argument is, no, we've got the curriculum knocked out all the radical stuff, but as part of the package, parents have to be notified about what the content is exactly, and they have to be reminded that they can remove their children. That's when I asked him about, well, why not make it opt-in rather than opt-out? But yeah, do you think his argument is that the 2-year process, when you have the 2-year consultation with parents, you can get a whole lot of radicals turn up to it, and that actually is what causes a lot of the problems with what's delivered in schools. So I can see both sides of the argument.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same. I suppose I'm not as concerned about it being set and parents don't get an ongoing say, so long as it's really clear to the parents that the kids can be removed, or as you guys were discussing, to have an opt-in situation, which is I think how they run Bible in schools
Yes,
now.
it
So go,
is.
fine, let's just opt your kids in or out, because you look, at the end of the day, sex ed is actually something that is deeply personal. It is personal to every family. There's actually a diversity of thought. So this is quite different than, say, maths or science. We don't really want a diversity of thought around what 1 + 1 equals. We don't need to consult on that. So there is an element of those radicals in the background that, no, family are not to have their say. We will just teach what the children will get to hear. But so long as parents know that they are empowered to have their children leave, or as you say, we lobby for a opt-in to keep it consistent with the likes of Bible in schools, then that's probably a good halfway house. Because the final thought, Bob, is if you're the local school constantly having to go out all the time consulting with parents backwards and forwards, and there will be, as I say, a diversity of views, which means there'll be a mixture. That's time consuming. It's exhausting. But the fundamental thing is parents need to know and need to take the time to understand what is in the curriculum being taught to their children.
Yeah. Okay, let's just have a look at the Ipsos poll and the cost of living tops Kiwi concerns. It's certainly a major issue, but voters seem to have forgotten just why Labor were voted out and think that they're the solution. So just having a look at this breakdown, this bottom right-hand corner is the interesting bit. Party most capable of managing the top 5 concerns. Nationals only top on crime, law and order. They think Labor can sort inflation, healthcare, housing. Housing. I mean, you have to be seriously deficient to think that Labor can solve a housing problem when, that was one of the things about the unauthorised biography of Jacinda Ardern. This whole, what was it called?
Kiwi
housing, Kiwi Build. Spectacular failure. So just incredible. Inflation. I mean, they say inflation. Labor had inflation up around, 7%, I think, before the change of government. Now, some of that would be a trailing off of the COVID issue, but it was also because Grant Robertson couldn't stop spending other people's money. So, gee, do voters have amnesia? What's going on here?
I think they do. And I don't think it's just in this case, going back to Labor. People do forget extremely quickly. I've also found in my time in Parliament, it's remarkable how disengaged people are from day-to-day politics. Junkies like you and I, Bob, follow it all. A lot of others just no idea. So I think there's at least 3 things. One is voter amnesia, as you put it. Secondly, Labor's low-profile strategy is working. We might sit here and go, "Oh, we don't hear from Hipkins; they're not putting out policy." But you know what? It's meaning a low target, a very low profile. And thirdly, people are frustrated with the current government. They're blaming them. I think part of it is an over-promising and being unable to deliver. I think actually really strong headwinds for this government, particularly in the economic space. And I actually don't blame them for a lot of what's happening. But the way they campaigned and what was said when the government formed ultimately has created an over-promise situation. So when people are paying for their butter and cheese and tomatoes and cucumbers, they're getting frustrated or filling their car and they're blaming the government.
Yeah.
And then probably the fourth point is just strong leadership is needed to say to people like Key did, or even Helen Clark, to say, look, don't worry, we've got this under control. And at the moment, that's not present.
It's always worry when a politician says, I've got this. Okay, let's talk about a party that people might want to vote for. That is the Opportunities Party. It is back. That's the one that Gareth Morgan set up and went after cats. And then there was some other guy that took over. I mean, they've never gone that well at all. But their new leader, a woman, I want to emphasize a woman. You'll understand why in a second. A woman by the name of Quile Wong, but she says you can call her Q. So Q, she was on the platform. She was asked about the men and women sports. She was asked, as a woman, what is a woman, by our friend Sean Plunkett. See if she passed, Simon, and note what she does when she realises she's not passing, what she then immediately defers to.
Where are you on gender-affirming care, puberty blockers, and the issue of transgenderism?
Honestly, this is an issue that I know means a lot to lots of groups, and I don't want to dismiss that people have strong views about this, but we do really see it as a culture war that is distracting from some of the real issues that we need to talk about, like our infrastructure issues, how we're going to pay for superannuation, how we're going to get out of this economic rut. I think we need to solve those problems first. And
okay, well, let's get it down. If it's a culture war, what about women's rights and women's rights to compete in sport against other women and have safe spaces? Where are you on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think my personal view is that we need to be fair, and I guess that means different things to different people. But again, I think this is an issue that affects a small number of people, and it's not to say that it's not important, but we want to focus, I want to focus this time talking with you and talking with Kiwis about how we're going to solve the big issues. Because when we solve those...
Well, I have to ask you, it is form that I have to ask you this question. What is a woman?
Okay. I will give you my personal opinion, and I would say it is someone who was born or becomes a biological woman.
Can you become a biological woman if you weren't born a biological woman?
I think going back to the sport question, there are examples where women can go through a process to have the hormones and everything else and essentially be a woman. Again, this is not an issue. No. I got it, because we're talking reality here. Can someone become a woman if they're born a man, in your opinion? I think there is I'm not an expert in this. Look, I'm not a doctor, and I'm probably like most Kiwis, and I read articles.
I'm not a doctor.
Things that inform my view. I'm open to lots of other people's perspectives. Again, I don't think it's an issue that the majority of Kiwis want to be talking about right now, when things like the cost of living and our housing crisis are the things that are smacking us in the face every single day.
All right. Let's move on to...
Woo! Okay, so that's going to go down well. As you can see, just putting up some of the comments as we were going through. Yeah, look, the Opportunities Party, or top, going to come bottom, aren't they?
I think they'll probably pick up a few percent, not on the basis of that interview. She's quite articulate. Look, I don't know her. This is really the first introduction to her. To the extent that it's really Gareth Morgan's party, I think will complicate things. And the feeling at this time for me, there really isn't space for a new party between National and the coalition partners, and obviously Labour and the Greens and Te Party Mail. The sort of ambit is there at this point in time. But I think, it's the classic deflection. the progressives love the culture wars. They love to import them all the time, but as soon as it becomes inconvenient, they cry foul. And the fundamental reason around asking questions like that, and kudos to Sean, is it shows the moral integrity or otherwise. It also shows, are you someone who can work in a real world with empirical data and facts and science, or are you living in a dream world? And unfortunately, Q, as you've named her, or she likes to be named.
Sounds like James Bond, eh?
It does. Well, actually, Q and James Bond was actually the smart boffin who knew things. She's coming from the complete other side. If you can't state what a woman is, how can you understand anything else that's happening in and around you? So,
I
she's
like this
failed big
quote
time.
from Murray. She's got a better sidestep than Christian Cullen. And Lisa says, I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is. Kelly J. Keane. That's right. I always quote that Supreme Court judge, the black woman that Biden wanted to appoint because he was woke. Name slipped my mind now. And she was asked, what is a woman? And she says, well, I don't know. I'm not a biologist. As Dee Dee says, the world of woke.
Memes.
Yeah, I did. Exactly. Anyway, she's not a very good Supreme Court judge either, all over the place. All right, let's move on. Capital gains tax. And they did some polling. Basically, they found that the country was split down the middle. Was 39 each. So that still leaves 22% who aren't quite sure. So split down the middle, but Aucklanders were much more opposed. And this is off the Herald's Instagram account. 45% of Aucklanders in opposition compared with 32. Now this is where Labour have got a problem, Houston, because if they want to win the election, they've got to win back Auckland. Auckland deserted them at the last election, and the only chance Labour has is to win Auckland. So if they've got a policy that is not popular with Aucklanders, they need to go back to the drawing board. But that's just me. I'm just a Liverpool supporter. What do you reckon?
I think your analysis is right. I'm concerned at one level that 39% of people think this is a good idea, though I suppose if I was to step back briefly, good chunk of that will be their core supporters. And also probably, again, we were talking about the Ipsos poll earlier. When people are frustrated, as they are economically, I think it's a fairly human dynamic to say, well, look, let's just get money off other people. If we can get this capital gains tax or any other tax, these wealthy people, that'll fix it. I'm feeling poor, so let's tax someone else. So that's probably in play. But you're right around Auckland. They need to win a number of those seats back and increase their party vote here too. But I think it's going to be very difficult for Labour to walk this back now. I think they've set their course. Now, they'll probably make changes around the edges, but they will be taking a capital gains tax policy into the election. Otherwise, this, Bob, is a giant flip-flop.
Yeah. I'm going to just touch on a topic that's not in our order, but I want to touch on it just so I don't forget about it, because I was very fascinated by it. So this was a story that was released today, and basically this National MP, Carlos Chung, was speaking in Parliament. No, somebody was speaking against him. It was Ellen White from Labour. Ellen White. Oh, what a terrible surname. Being white. And she was speaking in Parliament, and she basically said that it was about car emissions or something, and she was concerned about the health of Carlos's children and her own grandchildren, or something to that effect. And he took mighty offence of it and asked a point of order because he didn't want his children identified. To be honest, does he? I get the impression he needs to take some concrete pills. I mean, you're talking in the general aspect of the effect of policies on our children. And look, that's just part of fair game, isn't it? It's different if she'd named them specifically.
Yeah, I think it's an overreaction. The only caveat here for people to understand that because MPs are all deemed to be honourable people, and people can debate that one way or another, but I know it's very clear in the standing orders, the rules of Parliament, that all MPs are be treated as honourable. So if they say something in good faith, then that's to be believed. So in this case, with Carlos saying that he was deeply upset, Ultimately, that has to be respected. But for me, this was a mild comment, and you've nailed it. If he or she, sorry, had Helen White or any other MP stood up and named his children or his wife, that's beyond the pale. But a general comment that you're concerned about an MP's kids and your grandchildren, the generality, I think, is fine. So if this is an overreaction, it would be interesting to know what else was happening in the House in the minutes prior, because often what happens, just for viewers to understand, emotions can get quite high, and so MPs are finding some sort of outlet, or this could also just be simple, a bit of a game, throwing an MP off their speech by a point of order and claiming offence. But no, I think fundamentally it's a bit of an overreach, bit of an overreaction.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to our list. Interesting review out of the ERO, the Education Review Office, and they found that the school phone ban is working. 90% of schools had banned students from using phones. I remember when there were some principals saying, "Oh, don't ban phones, how could you?" But it's been a great policy. Secondary students say, actually, I have got a graph here to show you just on this particular one. Where is it? Standby caller. It is it this one? Yeah, this is it. So this is so I've just dug into the ERO report. I was just interested to see what students were saying, because obviously there's this talk about banning them from social media and phones. I was just interested to see whether they were kicking up a stink. You'll see here that only 30% of them broke the rule because they didn't agree with the rule. And one of the main reasons out the far left is just they wanted to stay connected with family and whānau. So that's the main reason that they might have got their phone out. The other question that was asked was percentage of students who say that restricting phone use had improved their outcomes. Now they did a Pacific, non-Pacific breakdown. I don't know quite why. But the interesting thing to note is that these figures are all, what is it? It's between 28 and 17%. Notice the bullying has lessened, the attendance has improved, mental health has improved, behaviour in classroom. This is all improvement. This is kids saying that has improved. So it seems like the kids are sort of voting and saying, actually, some restrictions on our phone use in school is actually a good thing. I mean, wow, who would have thought? Maybe they're actually more on side with some reasonable restrictions than people are willing to admit.
Well, my first thought went to the frequency of bullying, because it actually doesn't say if it's a decrease or an increase. Only kidding.
Well, no, yeah, no, it's improvement. They might want more bullying. No, it's an improvement. So that would be less bullying.
Yeah, no, facetiousness aside, I think, look, this is just something we all know intuitively. And look, I'm pleased the ERO and others are looking in to get the stats behind it. But you didn't need to be a rocket science to know that your child is not going to learn as well if they have a device distracting them. I mean, we know it as adults. You know, our phones are constantly drawing us in. There's always some other message or something else to look at, and children are just the same, if not more prone, of course. So look, it's a good result. It's really positive, as you say, that the young people themselves are affirming this. But really, we don't need reports to tell us what we already intuitively know, but the reports themselves do back up, as I say, what's common sense.
Now, I do just want to, just expanding on this whole area of bans around phones and actually, of course, the social media ban. Interesting to just watch what's happening in Australia, that Meta is actually kicking teens off Instagram and Facebook, and the ban hasn't actually kicked in Australia. They're not actually, I read the story, that heading's not quite right. It's Meta is warning people, kids under 16, that they need to download anything they've got uploaded to Instagram or Facebook, because their account's going to be closed shortly. So they're giving a 2-week warning. But what I found fascinating about all of this is that, as we've already suggested, you actually don't need big government intervention and digital ID and age verification of you and I, because these companies already know the age. They've already got, what was it, 90 data points on us already?
Yeah, the fact that Meta can do this shows they already knew. And it won't just be Meta. I'm hoping a lot of other social media platforms will do. Yeah, it was our contacts in the United States that we were talking to a couple of weeks ago who are expert in this space. I think they said within 4 to 6 weeks, the likes of Meta has 60 to 90 data points on you and can pretty much work out from there a lot about you, obviously your likes and proclivities and so forth. But it's also pretty simple. As someone else had pointed out, it was actually Ian Corby from the Age Verification Providers Association where I did a podcast. He points out that not a lot of children are looking up insurance matters or flights to the Cook Islands. Kids are looking at very different things than to what you and I are looking at. So that instantly gives them something to work on. So look, positive to see actually in this case Meta front-footing things. But I think too, you and I were very briefly discussing today. I heard it on the radio, only on More FM, so it wasn't particularly in depth, but some research here in New Zealand, or it was research, I think it was the University of Auckland that had led it, saying actually young people themselves are asking to have this ban in place. They can see the value of being freed from social media.
Well, there we go. There's the graph that I grabbed out of that report you sent me. And what it shows is that there's 47% support, 28% neutral, only a quarter oppose. So, and look, I did go a little bit further because I am fascinated as to what young people think about this whole issue. Is it being rammed down on them and being forced, or do kids actually share the concerns that adults have? I found this research from, forgotten the name of the company now. Hang on, I will tell you. Standby caller, Pew Research. So Pew Research, which is a major polling company in the US, and they are showing, you can see that line going up from 32 to 48. 48% of teens say social media harm people their age. Just a couple of other quick graphs. Teens are more likely to think social media is bad for their peers than for themselves, which is interesting. They think they're bulletproof.
Very human.
Teens are more likely to say social media sites hurt than help their sleep, productivity, and mental health, but they do like the friendship contact. So that's understandable. But here's the interesting one. Girls are more likely to say it's harmful than boys, probably because of a lot of the image things. Last one. Growing share of teens, that dark blue line, say they spend too much time on social media, which sort of suggests that maybe we need to help them with that. So when you aggregate all these graphs that we have just looked at, that would suggest that actually kids are sort of subtly asking for help, and it's time for us big grown-ups to help.
I think that's the key. I mean, I'm not for government overreach. I'm actually for a very light touch of government. I don't like the wider digital ID concepts, and I think even age verification we need to approach cautiously. But we know there's a problem. That's the first thing. We know there is a problem. Jonathan Haidt's research we've referenced often, but very well accepted. Social anxiety, depression, frustration, all of these things. Secondly, parents are saying we need help. And now from what you're sharing here, the kids themselves are saying we need help. So I think from my side, and you can correct me on this, but I think Family First side is saying, well, look, the evidence is clear of a harm, and those involved, the parents and the kids, are asking for help, so we should give it to them.
Yeah. Well, we have a very good article on our website entitled Why Family First Support Restrictions on Social Media for Young Kids with Caveats. I think Simon O'Connor wrote it, so it's very, very good. Well worth a read, just to see our reasoning behind all of it.
I'll send you $50.
Yeah, there was one other graph around schools that I just did want to show you. Did we talk about this last week? These are the truancy. So basically, this is stats of kids who are getting to school 90% of the time. So in other words, they're having a day off every second week. If you say, okay, 10% of the time they're not at school. And of that, I mean, it's dropped from 59% back in 2019 down to 50% overall. But look down the bottom right-hand corner there. Pacifica and Maori kids are only getting to school about a third of the time on a regular basis. These statistics are just appalling. And I'm glad that the government's actually sort of saying, actually spend less time telling kids what their sexuality and gender identity is and why whites are the oppressors and non-whites are the victims. Actually focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic and getting kids to school. But I was appalled by these statistics and the fact that they've actually got worse.
Yeah, I mean, it is worrying if I understand them correctly. So we haven't seen it before, but it's a deep worry. Truancy is a massive problem. I know the government's been talking about, I think actually putting out the stats and discussing it more is going to help. There's certainly been discussion around some tougher options, but particularly for our Māori and Pacifica, I think we're letting them down terribly. I mean, we know education is the way forward, and it's sort of linking to a wider topic, but I'm seeing a lot of rhetoric at the moment, often around what is and isn't included in the curriculum, particularly around the treaty and so forth. Well, one of the first things we could do to honour the treaty is to treat our Pacifica and Māori with the same encouragement that we need for everyone else and get them into school. Get them to school, put the effort there. I don't know, I'm probably not articulating that well, but I just see so much hot air around political ideology in areas like the treaty. Actually just get out there and look after the Māori and Pacifica kids as we're trying to do for all children, and that would make a difference.
Yeah, and I have heard some pretty concerning stories about how people are presenting the whole, what the government is doing. I mean, my understanding is that the government is saying to schools, actually, as boards, it's not your role to interpret the aims or the purposes of the treaty. Basically, it's to treat all kids, get good outcomes, including for Maori kids. And yet, as a result of this directive to stop boards having to focus on the treaty and actually focus on getting kids to school, reading, writing, and arithmetic outcomes, you've actually got some rogue staff who are telling kids, oh, the government wants to boot all Maori out of school. Not Maori kids, but all Maori and language and all that type of stuff. That's not what it is at all. And I'm just amazed how many school leaders are completely misrepresent. And I know this from very close family witnessing of those statements being made.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the ideological and political capture of some, let's underline that word, some teachers and principals. Actually, the New Zealand law, even after these changes, is really clear that teaching the Treaty of Waitangi, actually trying to make Te Ao Māori and Te Reo Māori available, it's actually written in black and white in the law. I think the big brouhaha was that the Erica Stanford, if I've understood it correctly, had originally said actually the most important priority of every school board is implementing the treaty. Now she's stepped away from that and said actually educational achievement is, but it's a complete fabrication to suggest that we're removing Te Reo Māori, Te Ao Māori or Māori history and that from schools. It's still very much present, but it's just my political observation is that the treaty and climate change would fit in this as well. They are both topics which are misused in order to allow the progressives to advance their agendas. In other words, talking about the treaty or talking about climate change is like the pointy end of the spear, which progressives use to push into schools to then not just talk about the treaty, but all their issues that they are obsessed about. Because this fundamental point, as simple as talking things like the treaty, is dangerous for a lot of people. They get very scared. Hence, the activists deploy it all the time.
Yep. I just want to give you this question. Dennis just says, Simon, when you say we are letting them down, who is letting them down? Their parents, teachers. I think you're using the royal "we are letting them down," aren't you?
Yeah, I think more general. Look, fundamentally, it's the parents. I think first and foremost. So if we're talking about truant kids, I think the parents are letting them down. Their wider family are letting them down. I think
some parents are. Because
some parents.
I mean, I've worked in the truancy area, and I know that some parents are doing their best, but the kids are just, this is part of undermining parental authority and the state saying they can raise your kids better than you can. Kids tell their parents where to go.
Oh, and there'll be some parents too, Bob, who won't even know the kids will walk out in a uniform in the morning because mum and dad are both busy working.
Yep. Yep.
But to go general, because I think Dennis's question is good. It's hard to be too specific, but I think families first and foremost, but the schools are as well. Are the schools letting the parents know? Are they following up assertively? There are a number of amazing programs out there that assist. The first priority is to get those kids into school. Go and find them. Bring the parents in and talk. I don't know. I'm quite affected by one charity that I'm quite involved with literally goes around to the homes with police and social workers, the police and civvies, by the way, and a huge care parcel, and basically says, how can we help? Your kid's got to come back to school. And I think that's quite transformative.
Yep. When I was working as a social worker back in the early 2000s, that's exactly what we did. Went round, and generally we found that where there was a truancy issue, behind that was a family that either was struggling, asking for help, or a family that needed to be reminded of their responsibilities. And so you take a holistic approach. All right, we're just about out of time. One more topic, and I did just want to show this clip because basically I think you raised this, that what we've got is we've got the Greens, there's policy being introduced, and I guess this is a worry around puberty blockers as well, in that if the government changes in a year, we could be back to square one on a lot of this stuff. I mean, I have no doubt that if Labour, Greens and Te Pāti Māori get back in, gender ideology, the radical stuff inside out will be in every classroom compulsorily, and possibly they'll remove the parents' right to take their kids out. Quite likely that type of stuff will happen. But there was a very funny interview just before you comment on that, where Chloe Schwalbrick from the Greens was on Herald Now with David Seymour, and David Seymour was just calling out hypocrisy on the whole environment stuff. It's fun just to watch Chloe just not quite coping with it all.
The second part is there's a hypocrisy to it, because when Chloe Swarbrick flies business class to London, she's dependent on mining. When people print stuff on paper, those things in the paper toner are printed, your furniture, your jewellery, your car, everything about life today depends on mining. What Chloe's really saying is, we want all that stuff, we just want the jobs and the mining to happen elsewhere, and that is total hypocrisy.
Yeah, and I mean, David Seymour was quite correct on that. I mean, everybody's flowing to Brazil for this, climate alarmism conference, and, they've left their carbon footprint all over the earth. Haven't they heard of Zoom? I mean, it's just the hypocrisy knows no end.
Yeah, but they're so morally certain of themselves, Bob, that they feel that it's worth it. That's their basic, and we see it in so many areas. It's like when we talk about media and their terribly prejudiced, biased reporting. They believe they're right, and therefore they're okay to do what they're doing. And it's similar with that. I mean, the other quick observation is Chloe is the master of the aggrieved face. It's one of her tactics, and the media just sort of lap it up. That's not an argument, Chloe. It was making a big face because she was called out. She's very happy to go to a climate change conference or talk about the poor, all while sitting in business class. You don't have to. No one's forcing you to. But yeah, good to call out the hypocrisy. And Seymour's also right. It's one of the big issues here in New Zealand when we rend our garments around how we treat the environment. We are often just arguing about exporting that work into China and India. They don't say it explicitly, but they want to hide it away so that we can just feel virtuous down here. So actually, kudos to Seymour for calling it and her out. Yep.
All right. We're out of time. Got to say, it's been a good week. Great decision. I think, credit to a lot of people watching who spoke up and made submissions when we asked them to, when the Ministry of Health did the review, made submissions when the Ministry of Education were reviewing RSE, and it just shows that voices can be heard. It is important for us to speak up. We won't win as I love saying, Simon, we won't win every battle, but we'll lose every battle that we don't even show up to. So, credit to, and I also want to honour Issy and Zara, our detransitioners who fronted up to our conference, trusted us with their story. That type of narrative being pushed back has been a huge, I think has had a huge effect on, I would suggest, Simon, that's part of the reason the media is struggling to really go hard at Simeon Brown for making this edict and the government coming out with this decision, because I think the media know that they're losing the room on this whole issue.
They are. I mean, they're losing on the medical and scientific side. The evidence is very clear now. Also, they're losing the international battle because so many jurisdictions are pulling back. You have powerful stories by the likes of Izzy and Zara and other transitioners from overseas who are speaking out. And also, you've got a government, 3 political parties with varying centre-right philosophies from conservative to libertarian who all agreed. And so, kudos to the Minister of Health, to acknowledge, New Zealand First, I think, has to be acknowledged in this space. They actually did step up to the plate. And as you've said, and can I add my voice for what it's worth, to all the amazing supporters and our viewers and listeners and encouragers and donors that actually spoke up and also allowed, particularly you, Bob, here at Family First to lead the charge. We couldn't do it without them.
And I think the breakers and, their spines have been stiffened to make a stand based on what the Manly Seven did, what Israel and Maria Flower went through. So it's a reminder that, when we take a stand, it stiffens the spines of others. Another favourite quote of mine. Okay, we'll stop the quotes and you'll stop the Latin. Anyway, have a great night. And we will be back next week. And thank you for watching. It's been a good week. Have a great day.